All right, this thing says I'm live. Um, Let me give it a couple of minutes here. Then I'm gonna go off the camera. All right, I'm gonna take myself off the cam. What is that? From Wi-Fi, try plugging router, blah blah blah. I don't know why I'm saying that. This shit is fine. But I'm gonna take myself off camera because seeing me on here is distracting. So let me stop the camera. All right. What I want to do in this video is I wanted to share with whoever views this a few um, incidents of slave insurrections that occurred. But I don't really want to talk about the ones that we know the most, such as like the Amistad. There was the Hollywood movie some years ago with that story. Uh, there's actual documentation for all of that, as well as court records and everything. But I wanted to talk about some that really don't get a lot of attention. And I actually wrote something. So, what I want to do instead of going off the dome, I want to read from what I wrote. Uh, but I may periodically, as I'm reading it, stop and elaborate on something or share my screen to show something that I'm talking about specific because we have uh, various sources that confirm these things. And one thing that you can be sure of when it comes to me is if I speak on something, that's because I've done extensive research on the topic. I don't like to mention anything I don't know anything about. I noticed that that's a very popular thing to do is talk about shit you don't know nothing about. That's not what I do. If I don't know about it, I have no problem saying I don't know. I'm not ego driven like that because I don't have an agenda other than I love history. I love Black history, and I just like sharing with my people. Um, but if there's something that I'm wrong about, I can take correction. But I'm not one of those people who want to hear you say, "Oh, that's wrong." Okay, if I'm wrong, show me. Show me I'm wrong because I'm gonna show you the documentation and everything that I have. But so give me let's see, a couple of minutes. I'm gonna go refill my coffee cup, and then I'll get started with what I wrote, and we'll wing it from there. I'm not really good with the speaking thing, so I'm just trying to start these little videos and shit uh, to get myself acclimated and more comfortable talking. And then maybe in future presentations, I won't have to read what I'm thinking. But I don't want to sit here and get. It's like sometimes my brain moves faster than my mouth, so I got what I want to say in my head, but it don't always come out when I'm speaking. Uh, and that's something I'm trying to work around and manage because I do want to do more with this history than just social media shit. Uh, People want me to speak and things like that, and I've never really been comfortable with that, but I'm working on that. Um, but anyway, give me a couple minutes. I'm gonna go refill my coffee, and then we'll get started. All right, I got my cup. Hold on. First, before I start, I want to make sure everything is good. So I'm gonna pick up my phone and I'm gonna go to my Facebook and make sure I'm live on here, so I can make sure this thing is, you know. Let me see. And I'm gonna go to my Facebook and make sure. All right, I just heard it. We good. Let's roll. So, where we at? Let me move my tabs around so I don't. Okay. So what I'm gonna read, I titled it "Coupe Tete Bulika." And yo, I may not have said that right. So if any Haitians is out here, if I butchered that, my bad. Uh, you know. All right, here we go. The phrase "Kupitet Bulikai," meaning cut off the head, burn down the house, was reportedly shouted by enslaved Africans in 1803 during the intense battles between the French and the Haitian forces, leading to Haiti's victory and independence in 1804. This powerful call to arms symbolized the willingness to fight at any cost for freedom and self defense, a sentiment deeply ingrained in the minds of many Africans, both those whose stories we know and countless others whose names have been lost to history. The instinct for self preservation, the first law of nature, drives all living beings from single cell organisms to complex creatures to fight for survival. As we've previously highlighted, the La Amistad Rebellion and other acts of resistance, we now aim to explore additional instances where enslaved Africans, though perhaps not using the exact words Kupitet Buleka, demonstrated this spirit of defiance and resistance aboard slave ships through their actions. All right. On June 11th, 1771, the South Carolina Gazette and Country Journal ran an advertisement for the sale of 190 choice and healthy Negroes who had just arrived from the Gambia aboard the New Britannia, captained by Stephen Dean. Now, I'm going to pause right there and I'm going to show you this illustration. I'm going to show you that. Where's it at? Illustration 16. All right, I gotta share my screen. So let me do that. Figure that out right there. Present. Share screen. Give me 1 second. Entire screen. All right, there you go. So this is what I wanted you to see. What I just read to you. This is the advertisement. I clipped this personally from the newspaper. And as you can see, a cargo of 190 choice and healthy Negroes just arrived in the Snow, New Britannia. The Snow is a type of ship, just so you know. Captain Stephen Dean in the short passage directly from Gambia. Uh, so this I put this one there because I wanted to document that this person actually existed. So this is before the incident that I'm about to talk about, but I wanted to show uh, that the ship existed and this person, Captain Dean, existed prior to this incident, and he'd been involved in the African slave trade for a multitude of years. 1 second. All right. So we see that there. So I'm going to stop the screen share and we're going to go back to it. This is corroborated by the Slave Wages Database ID 78017, which documents the death of 30 Africans during the voyage, confirming the existence of the New Britannia as a snow ship. Now let's do that real quick. 78017. 78017. 78017. Give me 1 minute. I'm about to share my screen in a second, but I want to pull that up on the slave voyages database. 78017. There it go right there. Okay, I gotta share the screen. Present. Entire screen. Share. All right. Where we at? So this is the slavevoyages.org database. Um, I did a video last night where I pretty much explained how to use it if you don't know, but I don't really feel like doing that again. I mean, if you know how to use the internet, you can figure this out. Like it's self-explanatory. But anyways, this so we can look up on the database and see this ship. So we know the vessel name. You see it here, New Britannia. The vessel owner, Mr. Shulbred. Uh, the country of origin, which is Great Britain. The year it was constructed, the place it was registered, the type. You see, it's a snow, although it's spelled Snauw. Um, and then you have this section here where it's the outcome, where it tells you where they were going, what happened. Did it land in its destination successfully? Things like that. And then you have where it began, London, England, and then where they picked up the slaves from, Gambia. That's confirmed by the newspaper that I just showed you. And this is where they landed, was Charleston, where I just was 2 weeks ago. Um, and they likely landed over there where they have the African American Museum at today. That was a beautiful, beautiful place, man. And that experience, I didn't document a lot of the museum because I felt like the camera would be a distraction. Although now I wish I took more pictures inside of it, but at the time I was just soaking it in. You know what I mean? So, and it's I can't tell you the wealth of emotions that I felt in Charleston, and this is why I went. Reading things like this is what led me to go there and see things for myself. To see these artifacts that still exist. You got these people out here denying our history and shit, and it's just crazy to me. It's crazy. It's insane. Like, the fuck is wrong with you niggas? Hold on. So anyway, this is documented on these slave voyages, and you can scroll down here, and this is sources. This is other sources of information where you can go. You can look this up. Lloyd's Registry, as you see here, which is like a ship uh, log of different of all the ships, their cargo, where they went, where they stopped at, what they were carrying, whether it was human cargo, whether it was precious metals, whether it was food stuff, what have you. The captain, all of that stuff is documented in Lloyd's list or Lloyd's registry. And you can go to, let me show you real quick. Like if you find one, you can go to Happy Trust Digital Library. Am I still screen sharing? I am. Okay. You can go to the Happy Trust Digital Library and type in Lloyd's list or Lloyd's registry, and or the year if you have a specific year that you want to find. And let's do it like this because that's not Lloyd's. It should pop up. Yeah, because I just searched one. Okay, there you go. Lloyd's list. This is Lloyd's list for that year. And let's, as an example, If you want to, you don't have to look through the entire book to find it. You can just put it in your search. Since the captain was Dean, put his name in there, and we'll see what pops up. And there you see, let's click on that right there. Britannia, Dean, London. So this is giving you the existence of the ship. Although this specific part right here does not detail any of its cargo, this is how you can confirm and cross-reference with the other sources, such as the newspaper ad that I just showed you a minute ago, that this ship existed in 1771. Sources is also here, down here, right here. Lloyd's List. So Happy Trust, this is free. You don't even have to create your account. As you can see, I'm not even logged in. But I bookmarked this site because I always go here for a lot of old books and things like that. Any books from like the 1700s, 1800s, you can find most of them. Copyrights are expired. Therefore, they can freely be reprinted. You can find digital copies of these books. If you're on the internet, you got to learn how to use this thing to your advantage, man. You got to know how to search. Stop asking people for shit or wanting people to do the work for you, and take the time to show yourself approved. I found all this shit myself. Nobody showed me slaveboys.org. Nobody showed me Happy Trust. Nobody showed me archive. .org. No one showed me these. I found them. This is another one that I love. I have a plethora of books here. Not here. Here. Some of the books that I had on there. Like this one. This is one that these historical revisionists love because of a certain image in it. America being the latest and most accurate description of the New World, 1671. They love this book because of one picture in particular, this one. They like to say, see, the American Negro was black, and this book says so. But here's the thing. John Ogilvy, the author of this book, one, never visited America. Never set foot in America. Two, you have, look at this llama looking creature right here. So you also have mythical creatures. What does this image tell you? This was his idea of what he thought America may look like. And based on his understanding of darker people in certain places, such as Africa or whatever places they may have traveled, they were thinking that the Indians possibly may look like that. Now this ain't to say that some of these people were not of a darker hue. Absolutely, they were. But everybody with dark skin are not the same people. That's where a lot of y'all get this shit fucked up at. And this is why you can't, for the life of me, you cannot look at pictures and say who a person is. You can't. You can't. You got to study the fucking culture, for one. Study the damn culture of the people. Because your black ass does shit today instinctively that's African. Yeah, I'm talking about you today. God, you can hold on a second. Get this book. This book here, Africanisms in American Culture. get this book as well. And you can see these things for yourself and realize that you've been doing some shit. It's African. Instinctively. Not Native American. God damn it. You can also go to the Internet Archive. If you don't want to buy the books, you one of them cheap ass people who don't buy books, then go to the American Archives. Archive.org. And you can borrow it, a digital copy. You got to make you an account, like you see up here, my account. I borrowed the book, and you can read the text. You can read the text. The entire book. This is a scanned copy of it. So it's not like it's some altered shit or anything, any excuses that some of these dudes will try to make to justify their bullshit ass stance. No. No. All right. I'm trying now. I got a little sidetracked there, but sometimes it's when you're dealing with people who are historically illiterate, sometimes you gotta get sidetracked and take motherfuckers on a ride, on a journey. You gotta hold people's hands, because some people don't get it. They don't read. They don't. All they do is watch videos of their favorite person or something that aligns with their idea, and they latch onto that. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. They're gonna latch right onto that shit. Give me 1 second, please. 1 second. All right. So I took you on a little. We got sidetracked for a moment, but we're gonna go back. So let me stop sharing my screen and get back to this book. Where's stop screen? All right. Now, so I was showing you the slave database and how it corroborated the existence of this slave ship. So this is not something that I just read in some random book. I wrote this because I've seen it in various sources. But let's get back. This is corroborated by the slave voyages database, which I just showed you, which documents the deaths of 30 Africans during the voyage, confirming the existence of the New Britannia as a snow ship. A few years later, the same newspaper reported a tragic incident aboard the New Britannia in 1773. The ship was blown up, killing everyone on board except for Captain Dean and one other person, both of whom had exited prior to the explosion. The South Carolina Gazette, in its May 31st, 1773 issue, mentioned the event with the following report. On Wednesday, last arrived here in the sloop Swift from Gambia, Captain Stephen Dean, late master of the Snow New Britannia, whose vessel was blown up on 24th of February last in the river with 236 slaves, 96 free Negroes, all his crew, and one Captain Thomas Davis, on board. Himself and only one man more escaping by their having providentially got into the boat but a few minutes before to take up some slaves who had thrown themselves overboard. This was in the South Carolina Gazette, 1773, which I think I have pulled up here. Yes. Let me share so I can show you that. Okay. This is the newspaper right here. On Wednesday, late arrived here in the sloop Swift from Gambia, Captain Stephen Dean. Exactly what I just read to you. So this is the newspaper account. All right. So this is not a modern day invention. This was stuff that was written about when the news of it spread. Being that this was a ship that was traveling from Africa to Charleston, South Carolina, it's written in a South Carolina newspaper. Documented, ladies and gentlemen. Documented. Okay. Stop sharing my screen. All right. In a letter addressed to Thomas Gatherer on April 12, 1773, the writer detailed the events aboard the New Britannia. The letter explained that on January 24th, in the morning hours, the ship under the command of Captain Dean, carrying 230 enslaved people, was docked at the Gambia River. The enslaved fighters managed to secure carpenter's tools, which they used to dismantle sections of the lower deck and seize control of the ship's armaments. After engaging the crew in combat for more than an hour, resulting in casualties on both sides, the enslaved people chose to set fire to the ship's magazine, causing a catastrophic explosion. This blast claimed the lives of approximately 300 individuals on board, including both crew members and enslaved people. The letter mentioned that Captain Davis, the agent of Mr. Shorebread, the ship's owner, according to slave voyages, sustained severe injuries and later succumbed to them, while Captain Dean suffered a head wound but managed to recover. Most of the ship's officers were killed, except for the chief mate, who had gone upriver to purchase more enslaved individuals. The correspondence concluded by noting that Captain Dean was en route to Carolina on board the Swift, transporting around 70 enslaved individuals, and had entrusted the letter's author and the chief mate with the management of affairs in his absence until further directions arrived from Mr. John Shorebread. The South Carolina Gazette and Country Journal ran an advertisement on June 1st, 1773, which confirms that Dean arrived in Charleston on board the Swift, just as the letter stated. And you see, I got insert, or you can't see, I'm not sharing. But now this, you can go to the newspaper and give me a minute and I'll pull that up. All right. So what I just read to you, screen share presents. Okay. So this is what I want you to see here. This was the paper that I just read to you. 1773, to be sold on Tuesday, the 8th day of June, instant a cargo of 65 healthy and very likely, I can't read that particular word, slaves, just arrived in the sloop Swift, Captain Stephen Dean, directly from Gambia. This was an advertisement because a lot of slave traders were particular about where they wanted the enslaved people that they bought, where they came from. Because certain regions were known for certain things, such as you had like slaves on the rice coast of Africa, where preferred in South Carolina, where they cultivated rice. Or many slave owners did not want people who were known as the Coromantes, because the Coromantes were known to be very rebellious. People like Queen Nanny, I do believe, of Jamaican lore was Coromante. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they came from Ghana, or what is modern day Ghana today. So they were very particular. This is why these advertisements for the sale tells them where they came from. I have tons of these I could show you, but I don't want to do that right now. I would advise anybody to go get you an account here, newspapers.com. I pay 6 months in advance, and it usually costs me a hundred and something every 6 months. But I do a lot of research, so it's worth every dollar to me because this is how you know what was going on in a certain time period. This doesn't mean that everything in the newspaper that was written was correct, but if you know how to cross reference, there's a multitude of ways to do that, which I just showed you using the slave voyages.org, using Lloyd's List, and a plethora of other things. You can go to ancestry.com and research some of these people. I did a video yesterday about Alexander Hope. I feel like I mentioned, I don't want to get just, I'll talk about that later. And I can show you in this video the documentation of Alexander Hope and what happened to him. He got his head beat in aboard a ship. A white man, captain. But so let's get back to the reading, shall we? So we're going to stop screen share. All right, good. Although the newspaper account and the letter report different dates, one stating January 24th and the other suggesting February 24th, it is evident that there was a mix-up in the reporting. The date provided in the letter, January 24th, is likely the more accurate one, as it comes from someone directly connected to the events and parties involved. While we may not fully understand the thoughts and motivations of the Africans aboard the New Britannia, their actions clearly demonstrated a fierce desire for freedom. Recognizing the possibility of defeat, they chose to take drastic measures, culminating in the ship's explosion. This mindset reflects a broader historical sentiment, echoing Patrick Henry's declaration, "Give me liberty or give me death," which is not only attributed to him, but resonates deeply within the universal longing for freedom among oppressed peoples throughout history. This persistent struggle for liberation is well documented in various historical accounts and narratives surrounding slave revolts and uprisings. What I find particularly intriguing is that contemporary newspapers serve as some of the most valuable resources for historians and history enthusiasts alike. However, those who deny the realities of the slave trade often dismiss these accounts, claiming that certain events cannot be substantiated by unless, that's a typo I did there, unless by government documents. Let me go ahead and remove that. Unless by government documents. They use this argument as an excuse to overlook the wealth of information presented in newspapers. For instance, my research through these historical papers revealed, I was just talking about this a second ago. For instance, my research through these historical papers revealed that a ship captain named Alexander Hope was killed by enslaved Africans aboard a vessel in 1756. This account is corroborated by Gomer Williams' History of the Liverpool Privateers and Letters of Marque, with an account of the Liverpool slave trade and slave voyages database with the ID 25030. If you was to pull up slavevoyages.org and put the ID 25030 in there, you would find the record of that. Although neither the newspaper account nor Williams' book specifies the name of the ship, the database identifies it as the Jane, which had embarked from New York, picked up Africans in the Gambia, and was en route to Antigua when 6 or 7 enslaved men seized their opportunity to revolt, ultimately killing Captain Hope after rushing the cabin and taking control of the arms for several hours. Williams provides additional details about the revolt. The blacks then fired all the muskets and blunderbusses at the crew through the door, but hurt none of them. The first mate and the cooper then rushed into the cabin, disarmed the slaves, and recovered the vessel. The ringleader of the slaves jumped overboard and was drowned. All right. Now, We're going to stop right there. And I need to show you this. Okay, I have the image, but I'm going to take you right to the website. So you see where it comes from. Because I saved a lot of these images myself, but I want to show you where it comes from so that you can do your own due diligence, which I expect motherfuckers to do. Don't rely on nobody for shit, not even me. Y'all gotta stop that. That's a bad habit black folks got. Want everybody else to do the work for you. Do it yourself. Y'all still waiting on Jesus to come do every fucking thing. Lazy asses. Jesus looking at you like, nigga, you good? You got it? You can handle that? Shit. The power bestowed on me is bestowed on you too by our Father. All right. So you go to ancestry.com to verify Captain Hope's existence. So you can corroborate it and know that it wasn't no myth. Now this is a index of obituaries, as you see at the top. Am I sharing? I think I am. Let me see. Yeah, I'm sharing. Okay. This is the index of obituaries from 1704 to 1800s of in a Boston newspaper. And you go all the way to the bottom here, and you see the name Alexander Hope, right? Captain, muster of a slave sloop from Africa, arrived at New York, killed at sea by slaves August 1st, 1756. Now, this is his obituary, the written account. So it wasn't even published yet in the newspaper. This is before it got to print. Still exists. This is how you confirm it. Now, you can go to, I showed you that. You can, what did I say? 1756. You can type that in here. You always want to, when you're looking up a name, you always want to put your quotations before and after. So it tells the database that you're looking for that specifically. Whereas if I don't do that, anywhere you see the name Alexander or Hope, it'll pop up. But that indicates that you want the two together, Alexander Hope. If you know the internet, you should know that. But again, sometimes you gotta walk people through things. Some people just use the internet, believe it or not, just for Facebook, social media. And they don't actually do this. All right. Saturday evening, Captain Ashfield arrived here in the sloop. Alexander Hope, a late master. Why is he late master from Africa? St. Croix in 11 days in the Queen's about 2 months ago, 100 leagues from the coast, 6 or 7 slaves that were upon the deck watched the opportunity when he and some more of the crew were in the hold, rushed into the cabin, knocked Captain Hope's brains out, wounded Mr. Charles Duncan, the second mate, in sundry places, secured all the arms and kept possession of the cabin for 4 hours. And just so there's no confusion about who these enslaved men were, Negroes. You see here, Negroes. I've seen a few videos where these so-called Black Aboriginals try to say that Negroes and Indians are the same. So that we understand, let's do something. I'm gonna walk you through it, all right? Random books over here. I find good old books, things useful, I save it. And I saved a copy of Webster's 1828 dictionary. They like to use the definition in Webster's 1828 of American to say, oh, it says copper colored. The original copper colored people, which is true. They are copper colored. That's not me. You can, anyways, let's not get sidetracked. Um, so I like to use the same dictionary because if it works for them, then it works for me, right? Um, so with that, we can look up Negro. So we know what a Negro is. This is 1828. A native, hold on, let me show you. A native or descendant of the black race of men in Africa. The word is never applied to the tawny or olive colored inhabitants of the northern coast of Africa, but to the more southern race of men who are quite black. A native or descendant, descendant of the black race of men in Africa. That's what a Negro is. You see that? Just so it's understood when you see Negro in these accounts, who they are talking about. Because, like I said, I've seen these dudes deny it so much. Negroes is Indians. They was talking about the Indians. No, they were not. Oh boy, this is fun. It's sad at the same time that there's so much misinformation out there in the world. Like people just make up all types of shit. And it's always people that don't read that are the loudest. Lord have mercy. I had what was it, a month or so ago, one nigga on here, I called his ass in a lie. And I was just kind of toying with him a little bit, taking little baby steps. I wasn't even trying to out his information or something. But he posted this picture talking about this is a picture of these black Choctaw Indians on a genealogy book. So I commented, where's the book? And he sends me a Google Images image. It says it's right there. So I looked it up and I went to the image, and it was actually a picture, not a cover of a book, a picture of black men. And when you read what it said Choctaw freed men, which I knew it would say that before I even did it. And I knew it wasn't a book, but I wanted him. I wanted whoever may come in those comments to see that, like, when you ask the right questions, they can't even answer it. That's why you couldn't give me a book. So I went back and I was like, man, there's no book. This is just a picture. And then he went into this whole tirade or whatever. And then he went to my page and he saw that I speak very negatively of Dane Calloway, which I do. I think that dude's a piece of shit and fraud and one of the worst so-called researchers in existence. I 100% stand by that. 100%. So he comes back. He comes back and he realizes he can't fuck with me. And I was like, yeah, I did say all of that. He's a liar, and so are you, because you on here lying to your followers, trying to tell them that this is the cover of a Choctaw genealogy book. I was gonna buy the book because that's what I do. When people introduce different books, even if it's something that I don't necessarily agree with, I want to see it for myself. So I'm gonna get the book. I have a whole bunch of books written by these so-called black Indians, a whole bunch of them. Because I look for it, because I want to see what kind of documentation you provide. I want to see it for myself. Don't give me no TikTok. Don't give me no YouTube video. Give me the source of your information. I'm going to look and I'm going to prove that you niggas is liars. So after this dude realizes this shit, he blocks me. That shit was hilarious. I'm like, yeah, you can't fuck with me. You can't fuck with me. And you know it. You on here lying to people. And I play with y'all for fun. I don't even know how this shit showed up in my on my thing because I don't follow none of them pages. I don't follow none of that garbage. I don't follow people or things that I don't care about. But it showed up, so I was like, "Well, fuck it. It's in my face. I'm a see. Where's the book? So I can go get it, nigga." Man. Anyway, um, where was I? Am I sharing my screen still? I am sharing. I wasn't supposed to be sharing right here. Oh well, we did. So you see, this is where I was. Yeah, I know I go on my little tangents and I get off track just a little bit, but we gonna steer the ship right back, get right back on course. I veered off and I hit a couple deer, along the way, but they didn't do no damage to the whip, so I'm back on the road right now. What the fuck is that? Hold on. What the hell? Whatever. I um so I don't need editing more. So we're gonna go back. Let's stop the screen share. We can do. All right. So I showed y'all the newspaper account of that. Okay. And the Captain Hope, I showed the obituary. So this is where I was. Some people seem determined to distance themselves and their families from the reality of slavery by pretending it never existed. To them, our blood soaked history makes us appear weak. However, the stories in this section reveal a different truth. There were countless rebellions at sea and on plantations, some well documented and others preserved only in brief newspaper clippings from the time. Are we really to believe that journalists in the 1700s wrote these accounts just to deceive black people into thinking we were enslaved Africans centuries later? That logic doesn't hold. Let me read that again. Are we really to believe that journalists in the 1700s wrote these accounts just to deceive black people into thinking we were enslaved Africans centuries later? Really? While we may not know the names of the black men and or women involved, we know that a man called Captain Perkins was slaughtered aboard his unnamed ship, which is slave wages ID 36013 on April 7th, 1732, as documented in the papers. His ship was to depart the coast of Guinea en route to Newport, Rhode Island, where when several enslaved Africans revolted, killing Perkins and multiple crew members. Another article from around the same period details a similar uprising. A captain on a Guinea man ship was killed, beheaded, and dismembered by revolting Africans who killed the entire crew in their fight for freedom. Now, that's a good point right there because I put Guinea man in quotes. That's what they would call several ships. Guinea man. Why? What is Guinea? Let me see it. Let me show you this here. Why would they call it a Guinea man in the 1700s? A Guinea man was a large cargo ship used to transport slaves between the 17th and 19th centuries. The term comes from the Guinea coast in West Africa, where the trade involved human trafficking. The earliest known use of the term was in 1695 by John Miller. This is what it said in the newspaper: a guinea man. If the slave trade didn't exist, why are they talking about a guinea man as a ship? Why is it called a guinea man? I just explained why it's called that, where the name came from. John Miller. There you go. Now, let's see. Um, Captain Perkins. That was 17. Oh, I didn't mean to open word. I meant this here. Captain Perkins, 1732. So let's do this while I'm still, before I stop the screen share. Found it. I think I did. I don't think I saved. Nope. There it goes. Here. Sometimes you gotta change the search around, change the spelling and things like that sometimes too. Uh, Here we go. As you can see, arrived a sloop from Guinea, Captain Perkins, late commander, who on the 17th of April last was killed by the Negroes, which rose on the sloop's company. They killed several of the Negroes and obliged some to jump down the hole and the rest to quit the sloop. Here it goes. About the same time, the slaves on board a Guinea man belonging to Bristol, which is in England, rose and destroyed the whole crew, cutting off the captain's head, legs, and arms. There you go. All right, so let me stop the screen share. Y'all gotta stop this. Y'all gotta stop this nonsense. You see that behind me? That's what I do. But there's more. I got a whole. Why are we on this camera? I did a whole because I'm using a monitor right here. So this is why I'm not looking at the camera. My computer's off to the side, but I have a monitor connected to it via a HDMI cord. So this book, I did a whole review on it. It's one of the worst books ever. I also have this one. Like I said, that's why I asked that dude what the name of that Choctaw book was, because I was going to get it. Because I buy these books and I read them. While we're on here, before I get off. Hold on. See what that is. Give me a second. Okay. This is I got over there. It details one that I talked about last night, Madison, Washington, and I may get to it and again in this video. I just want to show y'all these before I go back off camera and get back to it. The hidden ancestral identity of the American Negro. So I want to see what kind of documentation people provide. So social media posts don't do it for me. I want to look at the bibliography and see where the information comes from and see how you document it. That's how I know whether you know what you're talking about. If you full of shit, you deceiving people who don't read and you banking on their ignorance. That don't work on me. All the books when I'm working on something, all the books that are relevant to what I'm working on, I keep in this area. When I'm done with them, I move them over here with the rest. But I keep everything that I need for what I'm working on over here. So that I don't have to dig for it. I know where it's at. That's that image I showed you in John Ogilvy's book. The guy that never been to America wrote the 1671 book. I read y'all's work. This is how I know you full of shit. Don't worry. I will show it. I don't like it would just be too much to make a post about every inaccuracy, every error, everything y'all got wrong. It would be too much to make posts about it. So I'll do you one better. I'm gonna publish the shit. That's gonna take me a while though, because I want to get very detailed. I want to leave no stone unturned. I want to find every claim y'all make and address it, no matter how outlandish that shit is, because a lot of the stuff that I've heard is outlandish. I've had some back and forth with some buffoons on here, and I'm like, what? Oh God. Beyond Black and Red, American Native Relations in Colonial Latin America. And again, I told y'all earlier that I get sidetracked and I go on my little tangents. But at the end of the day, it's all relative. This is one that they like to post this book simply because of the title. Basically, Black Indian, see. But if you read in Cat's work, he's not saying your ass is indigenous. You're a freedman. The first path to freedom taken by runaway slaves led to Native American villages where Black men and women found acceptance, friendship among our country's original inhabitants. And though they are rarely mentioned in textbooks and movies, the children of Native and African American marriages helped to shape the early days of the fur trade, added a new dimension to frontier diplomacy, and made a daring contribution to the fight for American liberty. For 20 years, William Loran Cat's Black Indians has remained a definitive text on this vital and largely overlooked segment of our developing nation's population. Now, his compelling account of these people's lives, meticulously researched and documented with antique prints and photographs, is reissued in this anniversary edition, presenting to a new generation of readers an essential piece of our shared history. So when you see them promote this book, ask them what he's saying. Tell them to give you one of Cat's quotes or arguments. I bet they won't. All they want you to see is Black Indians, and they want that to be sufficient for you. No, don't fall for that shit. Study and show yourself approved. True story of the Black Creeks. I ain't delved into this one yet, but I wanted to read it. I like the title of it. Now, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with some of us who do have freedmen ancestry to be proud of our Indian heritage. There are those. And I would never argue against that. That's true. Some in my family, that is true. But to say all Black people are the Indians, no. You can kiss my ass with that bullshit. And I challenge you to prove it. Anybody. I challenge you to prove it. Not with a fucking TikTok video. Prove it. Show me the documentation. Don't show me no goddamn pictures you found on Google Images. That don't work. Show me the documentation, because I can show you documentation showing otherwise. I'm going to show you that. I've been showing you that. Black Mountain Builders of America. Clyde Winters is very pseudo. Um, he likes to block people anytime you challenge him. That's a very that's a key indicator that a person is afraid, and they want nothing but yes men and people who align with their train of thought around them. They don't want anything that challenges them because they can't show and prove, and they don't want to be made to look like a fool in front of people. Clyde Winters is notorious for that. But the book is written very badly, and a man of his position should took more care in the presentation of this book. Very bad, but we're not done. This one, it don't really got nothing to do with that. But this book was awful. I'm like, I don't even want to read this shit. Look at this text. How big that is. What are we, 3? You big ass font, man. You know, these documents still exist, right? And for the people who like to say, oh, the white people were slaves, the word slave comes from Slav, blah, blah, blah. White cargo, get the book, white cargo, get it, get it, get it. Well, I got it. I read it. And guess what? A few were. This is a book I showed earlier on the, what's it called? I think this is the last one. Yeah, it is. So I bought a lot of these books on Black and Native relations, as well as books by the so-called abos, so I can see where y'all getting y'all information from. And thus far, the only thing y'all like to say is, oh, my family never said we were slaves. Grandma said this. Grandma said that. That's what y'all use as evidence. When my granny, my mother's mother, when I asked her about Catherine Anderson, Catherine Dorsey, my two-time great-grandmother, I asked her, she passed away in 1950, I asked her, my grandmother, where she was from. She told me she was from Africa. Now, my point in telling you that is my granny was wrong. Catherine was born in America in 1895. But my granny thought she was from Africa. Now, it's possible that Nelson and Annie, her parents, came from Africa, which may be where my grandmother was mistaken from. But my point is, she was mistaken. Research proved what my granny said wrong. So if I was to, and that aligns with my viewpoint that we are descendants of Africans, I still can't accept that because it's not true. Because the documentation showed me otherwise. So what kind of fool would I be to be running around and saying my Catherine Anderson came from here? But when you look at her, it's clear she's African. Let me show you. Give me a second. Pull the picture up. As a matter of fact, she's on the cover of the new book I'm working on. I gotta find where the hell I put it at? Oh, here we go, right here. No, why is it not in there? The fuck? All right, give me a minute. Family records, it should be in here. Yeah, here we go. Gotta pull it up. All right, share my screen. Okay, let me push it back up. That's her. Look at that woman. that dark skin, that coarse hair. This is not no Native American. 100%. She's African descendant. She is from Kentucky. And which reminds me, I was told another story that my my mother's sister, told me a story about how she came to Knox County, where they are from. She told me that she was enslaved in Crab Orchard, Kentucky. That my great grandfather, George Dorsey, was working on the railroad. He came from Georgia, a place called Africa in Georgia, a district called Africa in Georgia. Um, Spalding, Georgia, Spalding County. Um, he came from there to Kentucky working on the railroad, and he brought her and her sisters out of slavery and brought them to Knox County. This is the family story I was told for a long time. I believed it. No records prove that. In fact, she was born in 1895 or 1885, excuse me. Slavery had been abolished for over 2 decades at that point. So she wasn't enslaved. And she was born, when you look at her obituary, which I just found recently in 1950, she was born in Richland Creek to Nelson and Annie Anderson. And Richland Creek is in Knox County. So she's a native of Knox County, Kentucky. So that I have to dismiss the story my granny told as well as my aunt. Neither one, in regards to this woman on your screen, is correct. Research proves that wrong. But both of those stories align with what I know our collective history to be. And I still reject them. I could easily run with that. But what that would mean that I'm being what's the word? Y'all know what I'm trying to say. I'm being disingenuous if I was to just push that narrative because my family told me that. I share that to say sometimes you got to vet what grandmama said. Grandmama does not know everything. A lot of our history has been scattered about, and a lot of it is lost. So just because a person tells you something, verify it. All right. I want to get off camera. So let me pull stop the cam. There we go. We're going to get back into this. The Captain Perkins thing. I just showed you. Okay, that's where we were. Captain Perkins, the Guinea man. All right. Although the fate of the enslaved men in the previous account remains unknown, the following story tells of men who successfully liberated themselves. According to a letter written by Captain George Scott, his Rhode Island sloop, the Little George, set sail from the Banana Islands carrying 96 enslaved Africans, including 35 men. On June 6, 1730, about 100 leagues from shore, a group of these captives managed to break free from their shackles, break through the deck, and kill the 3 crew members on watch. Scott, hearing the commotion from his cabin, fired his pistol through a hatch, driving most of the captives forward, though 2 resisted and smiled at the cowardice of the ship's crew. In an effort to retake the ship, Scott and his remaining crew prepared powder-filled bottles with fuses to use against the captives. Before they could carry out this plan, one of the bottles exploded by accident, blowing open the cabin, injuring the crew, and discharging most of their firearms. When negotiations with the captives failed, Scott and his men discovered another powder bottle, reloaded their guns, and shot several captives, forcing the others onto the quarterdeck. The captives attempted to retaliate by poisoning a cannon over the hatch. positioning, a cannon over the hatch and tried firing it, though bad weather repeatedly delayed them. Eventually, they managed to load and position the cannon, but Scott's crew shot the man attempting to fire it. Over the next several days, the captives attempted to navigate the ship toward land, throwing wood and water down into the cabin to weaken Scott's crew. Starving and desperate, Scott and his men decided to bore holes into the hull to let in water, threatening to sink the ship if the captives did not agree to abandon it once they reached shore. Finally, the little George ran aground near the Sierra Leone River, where the captives disembarked as local natives approached the shore. The captives warned these locals that Scott's crew would shoot if they tried to board. Once the captives had left, Scott and his crew rowed downriver where they were rescued by a sloop from Montserrat, which is in Liberia, I think. Over the course of the night, or what is known as Liberia today, I should say. Over the course of the 9-day ordeal, Scott noted that they survived on little more than raw rice. And the source of this information. Um, Give me a second. I'm going to pull it up. I like to, as I've said numerous times, show people where certain information comes from. All right. Let me screen share. Okay. All right. We share. So this is you can find information about it on blackpast.org, which, as some of y'all know, I write for them as well, and I can verify. Uh, there's a process to getting your articles published to them. It goes through a vetting process to ensure accuracy. So it ain't gonna just be anything on this site here. But that's a source of the information, but this is not where I got in historical society. Kenneth Scott wrote about George Scott, slave trader of Newport, in 1952. And he has his documentation indeed. So that's where that comes from, ladies and gentlemen. And you can get that source. I don't want to do it on the screen, but you can look at that and look at all of his footnotes and go and analyze these newspaper accounts yourself to verify the story and see where it comes from. Don't believe the shit I say. Absolutely nothing. Look it up yourself. Stop believing every fucking thing certain people tell you. Anybody tells you. Like I said, I could easily believe what my granny said about her grandmother. It was wrong. Period, point blank. Or my aunt. She was wrong. My research proved that wrong. Okay. Among the crew members who lost their lives were Thomas Ham. Did I stop the shit? I did. Okay. Thomas Ham and Dr. John Harris. In my search for further details about their deaths to further substantiate this count, I found handwritten obituaries for both men. These documents confirm that they were killed at sea by enslaved people aboard the Little George. With multiple sources validating this account, we can assert with confidence that it occurred. Just like every other story presented in this book, those who deny the realities of the slave trade may choose to overlook this evidence, but that doesn't change the facts, which remain indisputable, folks. What is that? Hold on. Shit. All right, we're straight. which brings me to back to here we go, right here. Give me a second, folks. Give me a second. Give me a second. All right, I gotta put up the screen share. Okay. Just like I did with Alexander Hope, I went to ancestry.com and I wanted to look up the names of these people who were killed. I just told you Thomas Ham. What is this obituary? Handwritten, as you can see. And you can go to Ancestry and find this. This is how you vet the information. Thomas Ham, sailor on the sloop Little George of Newport, Rhode Island, returning from the coast of Guinea. Can't read that word there, but it does say slaves who rose during the voyage and killed him while standing watch. June 6, 1730. Thomas Ham. Um, there was also the other guy, Mr. John Harris. John Harris, doctor of the sloop Little George of Newport, Rhode Island, returning from the coast of Guinea with slaves who rose. That's what that word was, with slaves. Who rose during the voyage and killed him while standing watch, June 6, 1730. These is two obituaries, handwritten for these men, 1730. It absolutely happened, folks. Okay. All right, back to it. We almost at the end of how long has this video been going? I've been going for an hour, 17 minutes. 0 viewers. But we don't give a fuck. We gonna keep going. Oh. Where are we? Okay. Multiple newspaper accounts provide confirmation of a ship variously called the Jubilee or Juba, registered out of Bristol. According to the Newcastle Weekly Current, on February 3rd, 1753, multiple vessels encountered Captain Smith of the Juba near Cape Mount, who offered assistance and directed a distressed ship to follow him to Anamoboa, present-day Anamabu, Ghana. A month later, the Derby Mercury reported a letter detailing that Captain Smith and his entire crew aboard the Jubilee were killed by enslaved Africans who rebelled just off the coast of Anamabu, cutting the men to pieces. This is what was in the newspaper. The Derby Mercury, dated March 8th, 1754. Captain Smith. Um, 1754. Okay, there we go, right here, the Derby Mercury. I wanted to pull it up. Okay, present. I'm tired, y'all, but I kind of like doing these little videos and sharing my history instead of making posts. I can do it like this. I should have did this one to my other page, my history page instead. But anyways, whatever. All right, this is the Derby Mercury, March 8th, 1754. Am I sharing the screen? I am. By a letter from on board the Phoenix on the coast of Guinea, There is advice that the slaves on board the Jubilee, Captain Smith of Bristol, to the number of 250, rose on the crew as they lay off Animal Boat and cut all the hands to pieces except the second mate and three of the common men, and that the Animal Boat Snow, belonging to Bristol and lying at junk, has lost her man, I can't read that word, and had her hull considerably damaged by lightning. And yeah, that's another that's another account after that. So yeah, but it was written in the papers when it happened. The news of it spread, and it was talked about. This is your documentation, folks. I can't stress enough how important newspapers are. Not only do you have newspapers.com, you have Genealogy Bank, uh, which I just repaid last week my $99 6 month subscription. I just want to share with you these resources because most people have no idea. I was talking to my brother last week. Uh, um, we always discuss history and things, and he had no idea that newspapers.com existed. But yeah, so you can go here to Genealogy Bank and find newspapers. You can also go to newspaper archives. I don't particularly care for this one much, but it's another. Sometimes you can find different papers that may not be available at Genealogy Bank or newspapers. But I prefer newspapers.com. When it comes to black newspapers, Genealogy Bank has a good library or good, what you call it, a whole lot of those. So Genealogy Bank is very good, especially for black newspapers written in the 1800s. So um, utilize these sources. Sorry, I got distracted by my phone. Uh, Utilize these sources, my people. Use your brains, use your smarts. Y'all intelligent folk. Quit being misled by people who talk a good game. That's how you get caught up in, especially women. They they find a guy attractive. So it doesn't matter what bullshit come out his mouth. They fuck with him. People like young Pharaoh. They love that dude. And that dude's an idiot. Yeah, he got some intelligence. But 98% of the shit he says is bullshit and is lies. And dude's an arrogant piece of shit. But they would defend that guy like crazy. I've seen it online. I don't fuck with him at all. Don't send me no YouTube. I won't watch it. You put a motherfucking young Pharaoh or Dane Calloway, Rashad Jamal video, that hockey Yaki Away can do, any of these cats. I'm not watching that shit. I don't want to hear nothing them type of dudes got to say. Y'all, it's another one. Uninterested, completely, wholeheartedly. Nothing against them personally. It ain't my cup of tea. I ain't listening to that shit. So back to it. So let me get the screen share off here. Oh, I'm already stopped sharing. Okay, back to it. While the ultimate fate of these 250 individuals remains uncertain, it is possible they gain their freedom. However, this remains speculative. Like those aboard the Little George who resisted and secured freedom, The enslaved people on the Jubilee represent one of many powerful, if lesser known, instances of resistance at sea. Now, those accounts of what I call Kupitet Bulikai, uh, all of those were specific to the transatlantic slave trade. But there was a number of coastwise insurrections that took place as well. And coastwise, for those who may not know, is simply intra-American slave trading. For an example, which is probably written in here, the Creole. I'm sure I wrote about it. I couldn't have left this one out of this. But the Creole was a ship in 1841 that was traveling from Richmond, Virginia to New Orleans, transporting Africans. And they rose up, led by a guy by the name of Madison Washington and his wife. This is a wonderful story because his wife just so happened to be on board and he didn't even know it. And they got their freedom once they took the ship and they sailed to, I want to say the Bahamas or Bermuda, one of these places, one of them islands. And of course once they got there, they were arrested and they went through a trial and everything. And the Bahamas, Bermuda government, whichever one, found them to set them free. So they got their freedom. And this man got reunited with his wife. And he had no idea she was on the ship. Wonderful, amazing fucking story. Story of Madison Washington. I'm sure I wrote about it. And I'm about to start reading this. So I hope I wrote this in there. I don't remember if I did, but we're going to see. So this section here is called Coastwise Intra-American Insurrections. But you had a lot of those before I get to it. You had a lot of those that was within the country, within the waters of the United States. There was if you've read my book, Drapetomania, I talked about a story back in 1820, I forget the date, where they killed old boy from Paris, Kentucky. And I probably wrote about that too. But let me just shut up and read it. So I started this with a quote. Brethren, it is as wrong for your lordly oppressors to keep you in slavery as it was for the man thief to steal our ancestors from the coast of Africa. You should therefore now use the same manner of resistance as would have been just in our ancestors when the bloody footprints of the first remorseless soul thief was placed upon the shores of our fatherland. The humblest peasant is as free in the sight of God as the proudest monarch that ever swayed a scepter. Liberty is a spirit sent out from God, and like its great author is no respecter of persons. These powerful words from 1840. Let me put this damn phone on silent. It keeps distracting me. These powerful words from 1843 by the esteemed descendant of enslaved Africans, Henry Highland Garnett. I absolutely love this brother, by the way. Urged his fellow enslaved brethren to defy the brutal institution of slavery and to fight for their freedom at all costs. In the same speech from which this quote is drawn, Garnett discusses the grim reality of what we know as I got a typo here. Let me fix that. As the coastwise or intra-American slave trade, although he does not mention it by name. The combined powers of Europe have placed their broad seal of this is his quote. The combined powers of Europe have placed their broad seal of this approbation upon the African slave trade. But in the slave-holding parts of the United States, the Trade is as brisk as ever. They buy and sell you as though you were brute beasts. Just the other words of a black man in 1843. As Garnett noted, the 1807 ban on the importation of slaves from Africa did not prevent the buying and selling of enslaved Africans between states. Coastwise slavery involved transporting these individuals by ship and down rivers to new slave ports, where they were sold like herds of cattle, often separating them from their families. Mutinies not only occurred on ships sailing from Africa, the spirit of resistance thrived among the descendants of those in the motherland and frequently erupted on the rivers, lakes, and coasts of North America as well. One notable case is the revolt of the Creole. Yeah, what I was just talking about with Madison, Washington. Please, I hope I gave y'all the goods. I don't remember what I wrote, but we're going to see. Which was traveling from Richmond, Virginia to New Orleans. In the same speech, Garnett commended the leader of this uprising, a black man named Madison Washington. Next, here's the quote from Garnett. Next arose Madison Washington, that bright star of freedom, and took his station in the constellation of true heroism. He was a slave on board the brig Creole of Richmond, bound to New Orleans, that great slave mart with 104 others. 19 struck for liberty or death, but one life was taken, and the whole were emancipated, and the vessel was carried into Nassau, New Providence. End quote. The Creole slave voyages ID 113035. So if you go to slavevoyages.org, put that ID in, you'll get information about the Creole. The Creole was transporting a cargo of tobacco and 135 enslaved individuals from Richmond, Virginia to New Orleans when the revolt occurred. The uprising was led by Madison Washington, an enslaved man who had previously escaped to Canada but returned to the U.S. to rescue his wife. Unfortunately, he was captured and placed on board the Creole. On November 7th, 1841, Washington and 18 fellow enslaved men initiated the rebellion, overpowering the crew. During the revolt, they killed John R. Ewell, a slave trader, on board, and demanded that the remaining crew navigate the ship to Nassau, a British colony. I said Bahamas or something. Now, is that? It might be in them. I don't know. I don't know the islands that well. I like history, but I'm not a geography guy. The British had outlawed slavery in their territories in 1833, and the men were well aware that reaching Nassau would increase their chances of being declared free. After a perilous and likely nervous journey for the freedom seekers, the Creole successfully arrived in Nassau on November 10, 1841. Washington and the other rebels were arrested and held until a hearing could take place. Ultimately, the authorities in Nassau declared them free, much to the dismay of American slaveholders and government officials who viewed the revolt as a direct threat to the institution of slavery. All right, I need a drink. Give me a second. Pause there. Let me grab me a water. While we're taking a pause, let me use the bathroom real quick. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. All right. So I'm back. My bathroom is, you get to it through my den area. So it's right here where I have my office set up in my den. So if you heard me pissing, I even know I shut the door. My bad. I could have muted this screen, but or the thing, but hell with it. Anyways, let's get back on track. We can support this story in many ways, especially if critics try to dismiss it as fictional. First and foremost, the ship's manifest exists, and it includes the name Madison, Washington. I showed that in the video yesterday, but I'll show it again really quickly. Because this is a different video, therefore I gotta show it again. Let me present share screen. All right. Now this is the manifest for the 1841, the brig called Creole. And if you look at the top, it's torn right there, but it says manifest of Negroes, mulattoes, and persons of color taken on board the, you may not see it here, but it's written in cursive, Creole right there, of Richmond, whereof, I can't read that, is master, tons to be transported to the port of New Orleans for the purpose of being sold or disposed of as slaves or to be held to service or labor. All right, so this is the names of the people. Now, see, they have anglicized names because they weren't transported directly from Africa. They were transported from Richmond, Virginia, headed to New Orleans. Therefore, the names of them was kept. But on this ship manifest, you will see here Madison, Washington, right there. You can look this up, and here their color. Some of them were described as brown. Madison, Washington was described as black. Others yellow. But for those people who like to say that there's a yellow man, that whites were enslaved. Remember, I just showed you the book earlier, White Cargo. That's what they try to use. There are no white people on this ship. Yellow, black, brown, black, black, brown, black, 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 yellow, black, black, yellow, black, 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 brown, etc. Yellow, black. There are no white people. These aren't white folks. These aren't Indians. Like you can look, uh, find these records. Type in slave manifest for the brig Creole, and you can find this document here. I encourage you to do your own research. Don't believe nothing I say. That's the slave manifest. So this is how we can verify, for one, that they existed. This document was recovered and still exists. And we have a photocopy of it online for free. You don't have to travel anywhere and go to no museum and spend all this money. A lot of these excuses, like, see, people like Dane Calloway, and I'm going on a little tangent here. People like Dane Calloway like to, in his writing, because I noticed it in his book, he'll say, according to the National Archives, according to the National Archives. And the way he words it, it will make it appear as though he went to this place and he saw these documents. But the National Archives has a website. And most of the times when he says, according to the National Archives, it wasn't in the National Archives at all. What he does is he'll take information from other sources, refuse to cite that, and he will copy their bibliography and make it look like he went through those sources himself, but he didn't. I caught him doing that a number of times. But this is the National Archive site. And you can just type in certain things like bill of sale. And you can find a bill of sale for various things, whether land or slaves. I'll just do this, slavery. And there's various records of slavery here. But on this site, you can find actual bill of sales. You can find specific, like as an example, this here, where it says, this is on the National Archive. And this was the law in 1808, which banned slavery from Africa. It wasn't outlawed in the United States. It was banned transporting them from Africa to America. That's what was, although it still occurred illegally. And many ships were captured and the slave owners in prison. There's a plethora of court records that detail these things. But yeah, so you can look at and you can read this actual document for people who like to say slavery didn't happen or that it was white people. Why in 1808 did they create this law here? And this is the handwritten copy of it. But if you can read the transcription here. This is the National Archives. Who are they talking about? Who are they? These people, Negro, mulatto, persons of color as a slave. This ain't got nothing to do with Slavic people or no white cargo. The language is very specific. Where do these people come from? You can look at the National Archives yourself. U.S. versus Amistad, the case. You can find the case. It's not just a movie. Hollywood. Manifest of the Brig Below. What's on the brig? Slave manifest from the Brig Below. Where are the ships? Ain't that what y'all be asking on social media? Manifest of Negroes, mulattoes, persons of color. Black, mulatto, black, black, brown, black, mulatto, mulatto, black, brown. Whether Negro, mulatto, person of color. Owner. That's the National Archives. And if you were quoting the National Archive, why didn't you link it in your bibliography? I know why you did. I know why you did. Because it would expose you if you did. That's why you did, nigga. All right. Okay. Did I read that already? Okay. We can support this story in many ways, especially if critics. Yes, we can support this story in many ways, especially if critics try to dismiss it as fictional. First and foremost, the ship's manifest exists, and it includes the name Madison Washington, categorizing him as black. The manifest records various details such as age, sex, height, and a designation that asks whether the individuals were classified as Negro, mulatto, or persons of color. It's important to note that this is in 1841, and as discussed in another chapter, Negro and black were synonymous with African in Webster's 1828 dictionary. Thus, let me read that again. It's important to note that this is in 1841, and as discussed in another chapter, Negro and black were synonymous with African in Webster's 1828 dictionary. Thus, when the manifest identifies Madison Washington as black, it indicates his African heritage. Additionally, the slaveholders' names are also recorded. Two of them, James Apperson and John Hill, the latter of whom was killed during the revolt. One method of verifying this narrative lies in the court proceedings that followed the mutiny on board the Creole. Significant details emerged while the mutineers were detained by British authorities in Nassau, indicating that their original intention was to steer the vessel to Liberia, reflecting their intense desire for freedom. Madison Washington was a key figure in the revolt, exemplified by his rallying cry, in which he said, "We have begun, and I must go through. Rush, boys, rush out, as we have them." He forcefully called to the enslaved individuals below, demanding, "Come up, every damned one of you. If you don't lend a hand, I will kill you all and throw you overboard." Freedom of death. As the turmoil escalated, Merritt, the ship's mate, became aware of the uprising and tried to alert the captain and the other sleeping passengers, including Theophilus McCargo, Jacob Miller, and Lucius Stevens. Elijah Morris fired a pistol during the mutiny, grazing the back of a man named Guilford's head, which prompted the enslaved men to rush aft and surround the cabin. When Merritt came out of the hold, he was immediately targeted by the mutineers, with one shouting, "Kill him! Goddamn him! He is one of them!" Merritt narrowly escaped and retreated to the cabin. Meanwhile, Howell jumped out of his berth, armed himself with a musket, and attempted to fend off the enslaved fighters, but they overpowered him and wrestled the weapon away. In a desperate struggle, he defended himself with a handspike, but was ultimately overpowered and stabbed multiple times before managing to stagger back to the cabin, exclaiming, "I am dead. The Negroes have killed me." Only a few of the enslaved men were armed, including Ben Blacksmith, who wielded a bowie knife taken from the captain, and Madison, who had a jackknife. Morris also possessed a sheath knife he had taken from the forecastle. Following the uprising, the Attorney General addressed the passengers on the quarterdeck, stating, "My friends, you have been detained for a short time on board the Creole to identify the individuals involved in this mutiny and murder. Those individuals have been identified and will be detained. The rest of you are free to go ashore wherever you wish." He then turned to the prisoners, saying, "Men, there are 19 of you who have been identified as having participated in the murder of Mr. Howell and in an attempt to kill the captain and others. You will be detained and placed in prison while we communicate with the English government to determine whether your trial will occur here or elsewhere." End quote. At this point, Mr. Guilford, the mate in command, protested against the boats being allowed to approach the vessel or any enslaved individuals except for the mutineers being sent ashore. The Attorney General replied that Mr. Guilford should not object, but rather let them go quietly, warning that resistance could lead to bloodshed. A magistrate advised Mr. Merritt, Mr. McCargo, and the other passengers to secure their money and belongings, fearing that the cabin of the Creole could be ransacked. The Attorney General, accompanied by a magistrate, stepped into a boat and withdrew a short distance from the brig, waiting for a signal. When a magistrate on the Creole gave the signal for the boats to approach, a fleet of boats quickly came alongside. The magistrates instructed the men to stay in their boats and commanded the enslaved individuals to leave the Creole and board the boats. The enslaved complied and passed from the Creole into the boats, assisted by the magistrate. During this operation, soldiers and officers were on the quarterdeck of the Creole, armed with loaded muskets and fixed bayonets. Once the enslaved individuals had boarded the boats, the Attorney General and the magistrate mingled with the fleet, congratulating the escapees and shaking hands with them. They received 3 cheers as the boats made their way to shore, where thousands awaited to greet them. FYI, slavery had been abolished in English in all of their colonies at this time. This is why landing in a British colony, occupied colony, oftentimes they were given freedom. After all the enslaved individuals except the 19 had landed, a barge was dispatched from the barracks to the Creole to take the prisoners and remaining guard ashore. The 19 mutineers were transported to the barracks, where one of them succumbed to wounds received during the altercation the following day. Oh, shit. Captain Woodside, the American consul, and the crews of the Louisa and the Congress had devised a plan to rescue the Creole from British control. On the morning of the operation, Captain Woodside and his crew approached the Creole armed with muskets and cutlasses acquired from the Congress. Despite attempts to purchase additional arms in Nassau, local dealers refused to sell. As they neared the Creole, a Negro man in another boat who had been observing their preparations alerted the British officer in command. This officer, with 24 armed men, threatened to fire if the American boat advanced, forcing Captain Woodside to withdraw, thwarting the rescue effort. Had British authorities not intervened, the enslaved individuals may have successfully reached New Orleans. The consul sought time to contact the U.S. war vessel to provide protection for the Creole during its journey, but the governor denied the request for military escort. In subsequent proposals, the consul tried to gather crews from American vessels in port to guard the Creole, but those requests were also declined. On November 15th, the consul suggested sending 19 mutineers to the United States aboard the Creole for trial, but this was similarly rejected. The American consul arranged for the mutineers to remain in British custody, where they ultimately faced trial for their actions. In the end, the jury acquitted the mutineers, recognizing their struggle for freedom and deeming their actions justifiable. During this period, the enslaved managed to destroy 2 half boxes of tobacco and threw several barrels overboard to clear the deck. Finally, on November 19th, the Creole set sail from Nassau bound for New Orleans, with Captain Ensor unable to continue due to severe injuries. The vessel reached the Southwest Pass on December 1st, where they took on a pilot and crossed the bar. By December 3rd, the Creole docked in New Orleans, where necessary cargo surveys were conducted. Captain Ensor and the crew formally protested against the natural dangers at sea and the actions of the British authorities in Nassau, asserting that no negligence or mismanagement should be attributed to them, attributing all losses and damages to the inference from Nassau's legal authorities. This protest was officially recorded in New Orleans on December 3rd, 1841, with signatures from the crew and the notary. Now, I put all of that in there because these were details from that came out during the court case. And you can read all of these details. You can find all of this information, especially in British documents. They have the UK has a like I showed a little while ago, the National Archives. The UK also has a National Archives site where a lot of government documents, court cases, and things like that can be found. You can read this shit for yourself. Don't believe nothing I just read to you, nothing I said. Ultimately, Madison Washington and the other detained men secured their freedom and lived out the remainder of their lives as free individuals. In his book, The Black Man, His Antecedents, His Genius, and His Achievements, William Wells Brown, a Lexington man, might I add, reveals that Washington's wife, Susan, was also aboard the Creole. When Washington was captured in Virginia while attempting to rescue her, she was suspected of being involved and had been sold to slave traders who were preparing to transport a cargo of slaves to New Orleans. Neither was aware of the other's presence on the ship until after the mutiny occurred. The revolt aboard the Creole is acknowledged in history as the most successful slave uprising. However, the details of Washington's life following his liberation, as well as the specifics of his early life, remain largely unknown, except that, according to Brown, he was born in slavery in Virginia to African parents and had no mixed blood. This was on page 75 of William Wells Brown's book. One newspaper, and mind you, this book was written in 1863, just about 22 years after the incident. Um, One newspaper mentions that he took the name Madison Washington after escaping to Canada in 1839, but his original name is not recorded. Madison Washington's story echoes the resilience and desperation felt by countless others, each bound to similar experiences of suffering and resistance. Although the accounts we've shared provide a powerful insight into these lives, one more story deserves mention before we conclude. Do I read this? Fuck it. Why not? And then I guess I'll shut this video off. Um, and this is a Kentucky story, by the way. You know what? I'm gonna save that one. I wrote about this in my book Drapetomania. I'm not gonna talk about that. Because I'm hungry, so I'm about to get off here and find me something to eat. But there you have it. There's so many primary sources that you can consult to vet information. Like, this is not some shit we learned from Roots. I've never in my life read Roots. I have the book, I haven't read it. I'm well aware that it was a fictionalized story. Well aware of that. I never, ever thought it was a true story as it was written. Um, it was based on his family, but the story itself was largely fictional, based on historical events and things of that nature. Um, so Roots, they like to, these aboriginals, they like to attribute um, us being quote unquote miseducated to think we African to Roots. But all of this shit that I've just read predates Roots by hundreds of years. You can look at the court records. You don't have to, while it's good and it's actually best to travel to different places, visit these courthouses and look at these documents like good researchers do. Um, but a lot of things have been digitized. And what they're doing is they're scanning the document. So it ain't like somebody is rewriting. No, they're scanning the actual documents and placing them in databases online. So they're bringing the research to your doorstep. All you got to do is log in and go to the database, and you can find these things. There's a plethora of court cases from right here in Lexington, and you can go to the courthouse today and look at these records detailing slavery, detailing stories such as what happened with Richard, can't remember his last name. Richard, who was an enslaved man who killed his mistress. He strangled her to death. He was ultimately caught in Georgetown, and he was killed. And that story was corroborated by several different sources. The man who he was jailed with, a white man, wrote about it in his book. I mean, there's so many ways. It's like people got to get off social media. You ask this question, you'll post the question on your social media page. Where are the slave ships? But anytime I see that, I know that's an engagement post. You want comments, you want dialogue. but you're not really looking to answer that question, because if you was, you wouldn't post it on social media. You would seek out this information. But people suffer from what they call confirmation bias. A lot of people will see something that aligns with their viewpoint. And so, yeah, oh, yeah, this is the truth. This is true. This is true. This is true. And I be reading comments. I don't even comment on most things, but I be reading comments and I'm looking for those people who ask, where's the source? And I promise you, out of every 100 people who comment on something, one person asks for it. And they usually are ignored. Their comments usually ignored, or somebody will say, do your own research. That's the popular one right there. Do your own research. That's usually said by somebody who ain't did none, because they can't show you where something comes from. So they'll just use that. And I see this shit a lot. But it's like, these are people who are calling themselves woke, conscious, enlightened. And yes, you're conscious only in the sense that you're breathing and you're alive. I mean, I don't see it. Just because you're pro-black, cool, but that doesn't mean you latch on to every conspiracy theory or every anti-white rhetoric that exists, because some of it is just simply bullshit. I mean, you got these people, we are indigenous to everywhere. Everybody's indigenous to everywhere. If that's the case, because we all originated somewhere and we're all fucking people, and we're all a mixture of a whole lot of different people. Very few people today, with the exceptions of people like off in remote places in Brazil and a few places in Africa and other areas, these remote tribes remain undiluted in any way. Everybody else is an amalgamation of various different people. People like to say, well, we don't even look like the Africans. Well, of course, our phenotypes have been altered, having 400 or 500 years of contact with Europeans and Indians. Our phenotypes have changed. So no, we don't look like the stereotypical African. But you can go over there today, because a lot of Africans have been mixed in with various different peoples as well. And the ones who are mixed in with European and other people look no different than somebody walking down the street here. Look the same. Like, y'all, God. Oh, Lord. But I've been on here for 2 hours. I'm hungry. I ain't got nothing else to say. Bye.